That's not true. If anybody describes me that way, it's the way they see me. It's not what I am.
Frank Sinatra named the 9 worst racist stars of old Hollywood's golden age, the people whose attitudes and behavior represented everything he despised. For more than 5 decades, Sinatra stood among the most powerful entertainers in American history. From the 1940s through the 1990s, the man known as the chairman of the board sold more than 150 million records, won an Academy Award for From Here to Eternity, and became the unmistakable leader of the legendary Rat Pack. He moved comfortably among Hollywood royalty, entertained presidents, and possessed a voice that helped define an entire era of American popular music. But beneath the fame, the swagger, and the carefully cultivated image was something equally important to understanding Sinatra. He carried a deep sensitivity toward prejudice.
I think that comes with a normal growing up and the way of living, friends, people with whom you become acquainted.
Growing up in Hoboken, New Jersey, Sinatra experienced vicious anti-Italian slurs firsthand. The insults thrown at Italian Americans during his childhood stayed with him, giving him an understanding of what it meant to be judged before anyone bothered to know the person underneath. His childhood also exposed him to different cultures. Sinatra was especially close to his Jewish babysitter, Mrs. Sarah Golden, whom he reportedly regarded almost as a second mother. His own mother, Dolly, was deeply involved in local democratic politics and taught her son the importance of loyalty, particularly toward people who were being pushed aside or treated unfairly. Those early experiences helped shape the man Sinatra eventually became. In 1945, he appeared in The House I Live In, a short film delivering a direct message against religious intolerance and racial prejudice. The production received an honorary Academy Award, and Sinatra reportedly valued the recognition deeply. That same year, he traveled to Gary, Indiana, where white students were protesting racial integration at their school. Sinatra confronted the issue publicly, condemning the hatred behind segregation at a time when many major entertainers preferred to remain silent, and silence was rarely Sinatra's style. Throughout his career, he repeatedly challenged segregation within the entertainment industry. His friendship with Sammy Davis Jr. became especially significant in Las Vegas, where black performers could entertain white audiences inside casinos, yet still face humiliating discrimination away from the stage.
Frank Sinatra, God rest his soul, was a great man to me. He was a great booster of mine.
Sinatra used his enormous influence to push for Davis to receive equal treatment, and the Rat Pack's power helped pressure Las Vegas establishments toward integration. When Nat King Cole was violently attacked on stage by white supremacists during a 1956 performance in Birmingham, Alabama, Sinatra reportedly offered his support and assistance. Years later, when Cole died in 1965, Sinatra served as one of the honorary pallbearers at his funeral, a meaningful gesture from a man known for avoiding funerals whenever possible. His loyalty to Sammy Davis Jr. was just as fierce. According to stories surrounding their friendship, when establishments discriminated against Davis, Sinatra was willing to confront management and threaten to walk away rather than quietly accept the insult. That position made him enemies. Sinatra faced condemnation from racists who despised his public support for black entertainers and civil rights. But intimidation did little to silence him. He financially supported civil rights causes, participated in fundraising efforts connected to Martin Luther King Jr., and was eventually honored by the NAACP for his contributions. In a 1958 essay for Ebony magazine, Sinatra expressed the principle behind his position with remarkable clarity. As long as white Americans saw a black person's race before seeing the human being, the country remained in trouble. For Sinatra, this wasn't simply another fashionable Hollywood cause. It was personal. He knew what prejudice felt like.
Will you remember the lyrics? Is your tie right? Will you use your hands right? Will you look pleasant to the audience?
So this dumb
He had watched his closest friends experience discrimination far worse than anything he had endured. And unlike many powerful figures in Hollywood who carefully protected their reputations by avoiding controversial subjects, Sinatra was willing to use his influence. Frank Sinatra famously sang about doing things his way. When it came to racism, he lived by the same philosophy. He confronted it loudly, publicly, and sometimes at considerable personal cost. And after decades inside the entertainment industry, Sinatra had seen another side of old Hollywood, the ugly attitudes hidden behind glamorous premieres, expensive suits, and carefully manufactured public images. These are the 9 old Hollywood stars whose alleged racist attitudes, statements, or behavior represented everything Frank Sinatra could not stand. And number 9 brings us to one of the biggest stars of them all, Bing Crosby. Crosby and Sinatra were 2 giants of American entertainment. They were contemporaries, professional rivals, and in many ways, complete opposites. Sinatra developed a reputation as the fiery liberal willing to challenge segregation. Crosby represented a quieter, more conservative side of American celebrity culture. Their rivalry became especially personal in 1962. President John F. Kennedy had been expected to stay at Sinatra's Palm Springs home, and Sinatra reportedly spent a fortune preparing for the presidential visit. He even made extensive improvements to the property in anticipation of Kennedy's arrival. Then, suddenly, the plans changed. Kennedy would not be staying with Frank Sinatra. Instead, the president stayed with Bing Crosby. For Sinatra, it was more than a simple change of accommodations.
In fact, you're a performance performer.
You've got to be on the ball from the minute you step out into that spotlight. You've got to know exactly what you're doing every second on that stage.
It was a humiliating rejection involving politics, personal relationships, and Sinatra's increasingly uncomfortable connections. And while Crosby may have appeared to be merely Sinatra's polished professional rival, the deeper story surrounding the 2 men and the racial attitudes attributed to Crosby's world would reveal why their differences went far beyond who sold more records. Because for Frank Sinatra, some rivalries were about show business. Others were about something much more personal. Bing Crosby was the safe choice, the polished entertainer who rarely caused controversy. But parts of his career tell a more complicated story. His 1942 classic Holiday Inn included a full blackface musical number built around Abraham Lincoln's birthday. The irony was striking.
I've always admired people who are gentle and who have great patience.
Performers appearing in blackface while supposedly honoring the president remembered for ending slavery. And it wasn't Crosby's only connection to the practice. Earlier productions, including King of Jazz in 1930, also featured him performing in blackface. Yet Hollywood largely allowed those images to disappear from Crosby's legacy. Holiday Inn introduced White Christmas, which became one of the most successful recordings in music history. As the song grew into an American holiday tradition, the film's offensive sequence became increasingly uncomfortable. Television broadcasts sometimes removed the number entirely, meaning generations of viewers could watch the movie without ever knowing it existed. Crosby's public image survived almost untouched. But the next entertainer on this list performed racially offensive material in front of enormous audiences, and people laughed along. Number 8, Bob Hope. Both became Las Vegas headliners, television giants, and household names whose careers lasted for decades. But their approaches to racial issues could be very different. At the 1958 Academy Awards, Hope appeared alongside John Wayne in a comedy routine that included racial stereotypes, performed live before Hollywood's biggest stars. Then there were the famous road movies with Bing Crosby. Across films like Road to Morocco, Road to Bali, and Road to Hong Kong, the comedy frequently relied on exaggerated portrayals of foreign cultures.
And apparently what I've done is, without knowing it, is I've aped these people and begun to follow that kind of line.
Characters from Asia, the Middle East, and the Pacific were often reduced to stereotypes designed for American audiences to laugh at. Similar humor appeared throughout an era when such material was considered acceptable mainstream entertainment. Yet Hope's reputation became nearly untouchable. His legendary USO tours transformed him into a symbol of American patriotism. He entertained generations of troops, received the Congressional Gold Medal and numerous other honors, and became one of the most celebrated entertainers of the 20th century. The offensive material remained part of the historical record, but rarely defined how America remembered him. If Hope's image was protected by patriotism, however, the next star became associated with something far harder for modern audiences to overlook. Hope and Sinatra occupied similar worlds. Number 7, Mickey Rooney. During the late 1930s, Rooney was one of America's biggest box office attractions and among MGM's most valuable stars. Through the Andy Hardy films, he became a symbol of youthful, wholesome American entertainment. But in 1961, Rooney appeared in Breakfast at Tiffany's as Mr. Yunyoshi, Holly Golightly's Japanese neighbor. The performance would become one of the most notorious racial caricatures in mainstream Hollywood history. Rooney wore exaggerated prosthetic teeth, makeup designed to alter his eyes, and adopted an intentionally exaggerated accent. The character was presented almost entirely as comic relief, built around stereotypes of Japanese people. At the time, audiences were expected to laugh. Decades later, the same scenes would become deeply uncomfortable reminders of what Hollywood once considered acceptable entertainment. This was not a brief appearance. Mickey Rooney's Mr. Yunyoshi was a recurring character, performed by a white actor in exaggerated yellowface in 1961. Years later, Rooney defended the role by claiming he had rarely heard complaints about it. Whatever his intentions, the performance has since become one of the most criticized racial caricatures in Hollywood history. Yet for decades, Breakfast at Tiffany's remained celebrated almost entirely for Audrey Hepburn's iconic performance, its glamorous style, and Moon River. The uncomfortable Yunyoshi scenes became something Hollywood preferred not to discuss. But the next figure on this list was powerful in a completely different way. He didn't simply appear in controversial films. He helped shape the political machinery that could decide who worked in Hollywood and who didn't. Number 6, Cecil B. DeMille. DeMille is remembered as one of Hollywood's founding giants, the legendary filmmaker behind enormous biblical spectacles like the Ten Commandments. But he was also deeply involved in Hollywood's conservative political movement. In 1944, DeMille helped establish the Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals, an organization that became closely associated with the anti-communist movement that eventually fueled Hollywood's blacklist era. Frank Sinatra found himself on the opposite side of that battle. When Sinatra attempted to hire blacklisted screenwriter Albert Maltz in 1960, he was challenging a system that powerful Hollywood conservatives had spent years defending. DeMille's films have also faced criticism for their portrayals of minorities. His 1915 film The Cheat became controversial for its depiction of an Asian villain, while other productions have been criticized for reinforcing racial stereotypes common during that era. He also became involved in a bitter conflict within the Directors Guild over political loyalty, demonstrating just how intensely ideology had become intertwined with Hollywood power. Yet DeMille's legacy remained dominated by his cinematic achievements. His name became synonymous with epic filmmaking, and the Golden Globe's Lifetime Achievement honor still carries his name. DeMille represented the institutional power behind old Hollywood, but that power needed influential voices willing to publicly attack anyone who stepped out of line. And the next person came directly after Frank Sinatra. Number 5, Hedda Hopper. This battle was personal. When Sinatra announced plans to hire Albert Maltz in 1960, Hopper used her enormously influential newspaper column to attack the decision. With a readership reportedly reaching tens of millions, Her words carried extraordinary power. She warned that Sinatra's decision could create political problems for John F. Kennedy's presidential campaign and amplified the growing backlash against him. Soon, conservative organizations and prominent Hollywood figures joined the criticism. Sinatra was no longer simply defending one writer. He was facing an organized pressure campaign capable of threatening his reputation, his political relationships, and perhaps even his career. The pressure campaign worked. Sinatra eventually dropped Albert Maltz from the project, a decision he reportedly regretted deeply. For a man who had built his reputation on standing against prejudice, backing down under political pressure was a painful defeat. And Hedda Hopper had helped create that pressure. To the American public, Hopper was Hollywood's colorful gossip queen, famous for extravagant hats and a column filled with celebrity secrets. But behind that image was one of the industry's most influential conservative voices. Hopper defended controversial portrayals of black characters and criticized organizations that challenged Hollywood's racial stereotypes. She also strongly supported James Baskett, who played Uncle Remus in Disney's Song of the South, campaigning for him to receive special Academy recognition. Her influence extended far beyond movie reviews and gossip. Hopper maintained connections with powerful political figures in the FBI, and her attacks could seriously damage careers. When she targeted someone, millions of readers heard about it. Frank Sinatra discovered that firsthand, but if Hopper helped defend Hollywood's existing system, the next figure created something far more consequential. Number 4, D.W. Griffith. Griffith is often credited with helping develop the visual language of modern cinema. Techniques associated with his filmmaking influenced generations of directors and shaped the industry Sinatra eventually entered. But Griffith also directed The Birth of a Nation in 1915. The 3-hour epic portrayed the Ku Klux Klan as heroic defenders of the American South, while presenting black Americans through grotesque and dehumanizing stereotypes. White actors in blackface portrayed black men as dangerous predators, turning racial fear into mass entertainment. The film became an enormous cultural phenomenon. It was even screened at the White House during Woodrow Wilson's presidency, giving the production extraordinary legitimacy. Around the same period, the Ku Klux Klan was revived in Georgia, and The Birth of a Nation became closely associated with the organization's resurgence and was later used in Klan recruitment. Within a decade, the revived Klan claimed millions of members. Yet Griffith's reputation within Hollywood remained complicated. Film historians celebrated his technical innovations, while generations debated whether those achievements could ever be separated from the racist ideology expressed in his most famous film. For decades, his influence on filmmaking received enormous attention. The consequences of The Birth of a Nation often received far less. Griffith helped transform cinema into a powerful storytelling medium and demonstrated just how effectively that medium could spread racial propaganda. But the next name belonged to a star from a much later Hollywood generation. Number 3, Walter Brennan. Brennan was one of the most successful character actors in Hollywood history. He won 3 Academy Awards for Best Supporting Actor, an extraordinary achievement, and appeared in well over 200 films. To millions of Americans, Brennan became the familiar, lovable old-timer of movies and television, particularly through The Real McCoys. But politically and socially, Brennan and Sinatra represented dramatically different sides of Hollywood. Sinatra publicly supported civil rights and repeatedly challenged racial discrimination. Brennan developed a reputation for deeply conservative political views and controversial statements that disturbed some of those who worked around him. Walter Brennan's politics placed him far from Frank Sinatra. Brennan was associated with the fiercely conservative John Birch Society and viewed much of the civil rights movement through the lens of communist influence. While Sinatra supported Martin Luther King Jr., Brennan backed George Wallace, the segregationist presidential candidate, in 1968. His views reportedly went even further. Brennan publicly criticized civil rights demonstrations and expressed extremely harsh opinions about urban unrest during the 1960s. According to accounts published about him, he believed violent force should have been used against rioters during the Watts uprising. Then came an allegation that permanently darkened his reputation. According to later accounts, when news reached the set of The Guns of Will Sonnet that Martin Luther King Jr. had been assassinated in 1968, Brennan reportedly reacted with celebration. Similar claims were later made about his response to Robert F. Kennedy's assassination. Yet Brennan's career continued. To audiences, he remained America's lovable grandfather figure, while his extreme political views stayed largely outside the mainstream story of his Hollywood legacy. But the next man made his beliefs impossible to ignore. Number 2, John Wayne. Wayne and Sinatra represented opposite political forces within Hollywood. Their conflict intensified in 1960 when Sinatra attempted to hire blacklisted writer Albert Maltz. Wayne publicly criticized the decision and even dragged Sinatra's friendship with presidential candidate John F. Kennedy into the controversy. According to accounts from the era, Sinatra later confronted Wayne directly. The situation became heated enough that the two Hollywood giants nearly came to blows. There was even another legendary confrontation involving Sinatra's circle in Las Vegas, where Wayne reportedly knocked down one of Sinatra's associates during an argument. But their disagreement went deeper than personal rivalry. In a controversial 1971 Playboy interview, Wayne explicitly said he believed in white supremacy until black Americans reached what he considered a certain level of education and responsibility. Discussing Native Americans, he also defended the historical seizure of their land as a matter of survival. The comments were published for everyone to read. Wayne had also served as president of the Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals, the conservative organization associated with figures including Cecil B. DeMille and Walt Disney. Yet his career continued almost untouched. Hollywood kept presenting Wayne as a symbol of rugged American values, and his political statements gradually faded from popular discussion. Decades later, controversies surrounding tributes bearing his name, including debates over John Wayne Airport, brought the interview back into public attention. Wayne had said the words openly. For years, much of Hollywood simply chose to remember something else, but the number one figure on this list possessed influence beyond movies and politics. He helped shape the entertainment consumed by generations of children. Number 1, Walt Disney. Disney was another prominent member of the Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals, placing him within the same conservative Hollywood political network that Sinatra repeatedly found himself opposing. But Disney's cultural influence reached far beyond political organizations. To millions of families, he was Uncle Walt, the visionary behind Mickey Mouse, Disneyland, and an entertainment empire built around childhood imagination. Yet some early Disney productions contained racial stereotypes that have become increasingly controversial with time. Characters and sequences in films like Dumbo, Peter Pan, and other early animated productions reflected attitudes common in Hollywood during their respective eras. Perhaps the most controversial example, however, was Song of the South, Disney's 1946 combination of live action and animation. The film presented an idealized version of the post-Civil War American South and featured racial imagery that generated criticism from civil rights organizations even around the time of its release. Disney would eventually become one of the most powerful names in global entertainment. But behind the beloved characters and carefully protected family image remained a complicated racial legacy, one that would become increasingly difficult for the company bearing Walt Disney's name to explain away. And for Frank Sinatra, a man who had spent decades using his influence to challenge segregation, that represented the fundamental divide running through old Hollywood. Walt Disney became one of the most trusted names in family entertainment. But the studio's early history included racial stereotypes that remain controversial today. Disney's 1946 film, Song of the South, presented an idealized vision of the post-Civil War South through the story of Uncle Remus, a portrayal criticized for minimizing the brutal realities surrounding race and slavery's aftermath. Other Disney productions also contained imagery that modern audiences have questioned. Dumbo featured a group of crows, including a character historically identified as Jim Crow. Lady and the Tramp presented the Siamese cats through exaggerated Asian stereotypes, while characters in other animated classics have faced similar criticism. Over time, Disney began distancing itself from parts of that history. Song of the South was never officially released on home video in the United States, and Splash Mountain, the theme park attraction inspired by characters from the film, was eventually closed and reimagined. For decades, however, these controversies existed alongside the carefully protected image of Walt Disney as the creator of wholesome family entertainment. And that brings us back to Frank Sinatra. Whatever his flaws, and Sinatra certainly had many, his public record on racial equality separated him from much of the Hollywood establishment around him. He supported black performers, challenged segregation, backed civil rights causes, and used his enormous influence when remaining silent would have been easier. The larger story is about more than 9 famous names. It's about an old Hollywood system capable of protecting uncomfortable truths behind beloved movies, patriotic images, Christmas songs, and carefully constructed legends. Sinatra understood that fame could protect a reputation for decades. But eventually, history begins asking harder questions. And now you've seen the stars whose racial attitudes and controversial legacies stood in direct opposition to the principles Frank Sinatra publicly championed. Which name on this list surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this look behind the carefully polished image of Hollywood's golden age, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves discovering the untold stories of classic Hollywood. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.